let's talk about something that gets right to the core of who we are. It's a question philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. Do you really have free will, or is every single choice you've ever made just an illusion? Seriously, think about it for a second. The decision to watch this, what you ate for lunch, the choice to hit the snooze button this morning. Did you genuinely, freely choose that? Or was it just the inevitable outcome of a million different things that came before? Let's get into it. Okay, so let's set the stage with the two main players in this debate. On one side, you've got free will. This is the idea that probably feels most natural to us, that you're in the driver's seat. You're the author of your story, and you could have made a different choice. Then you have determinism. This is the idea that every event, and that includes your thoughts and choices, is basically the end result of a long, long chain of cause and effect, all governed by the fundamental laws of nature. So first, let's really dive into the case for a deterministic universe. This is the idea that every single choice you think you're making is just one more link in a huge, unbreakable chain of events. This idea really took off with the rise of classical physics. Thinkers like Newton showed us a universe that seemed to run like a giant, predictable machine, and that led to this amazing metaphor of a clockwork universe. The thinking went something like this. If you could somehow know the position and momentum of every single particle at one exact moment, you could, in theory, calculate everything that would ever happen in the future. And this is a perfect way to visualize it. Just imagine a long line of dominoes set in motion 13.8 billion years ago with the Big Bang. Each domino falls, knocking over the next one, all according to the strict laws of physics. And that chain reaction leads to the formation of stars, to our planet, to the evolution of life, right down to your unique DNA, the environment you grew up in, and ultimately to the specific neurons firing in your brain that produce what you experience as a conscious choice. Now, that might all seem a little abstract, right? But modern neuroscience takes this whole debate from the cosmic scale and brings it right inside your own skull. And honestly, this is where some of the most powerful evidence against free will comes from. So check this out. This number, around 300 milliseconds, is from some groundbreaking experiments by a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet. He found that your brain shows a ramp-up of activity, this readiness potential, a whole third of a second before you're even consciously aware that you've decided to do something. For a determinist, the implications of this are just massive. It suggests that your brain makes a decision on an unconscious level first. That feeling you get of, okay, I'm choosing to do this now, might just be a story your conscious mind tells itself after the fact to make sense of what already happened. Now, to be fair, some people argue we still have a conscious veto power to stop an action. But it seems like the initial spark happens before you are even aware of it. But hang on, the case isn't closed, not by a long shot. Because just when determinism starts to look like a sure thing, science itself throws a huge wrench in the works and opens up some space for real, genuine agency. Remember that nice, neat clockwork universe we were talking about? Well, it was a beautiful idea, but it turns out the universe is, well, a lot weirder than that. When you zoom way, way in, down to the most fundamental level of reality, that predictable machine completely breaks down. And this is where we run into quantum indeterminacy. At the subatomic level, things like when a radioactive atom will decay aren't set in stone. They are fundamentally random. We can only talk about them in terms of probabilities. This injects a true element of chance into the fabric of the universe, and that potentially breaks that perfect, unbreakable chain of cause and effect. And okay, moving away from physics, there's another piece of evidence that's impossible to ignore: our own firsthand experience. Every single day, you feel what it's like to think things over, to weigh the pros and cons, and to feel like you are the one making the call. It's this deep, powerful sense that you are in charge of your actions. For people who believe in true free will, they're often called libertarians in philosophy, this incredibly strong internal feeling can't just be brushed aside as some kind of trick. They argue that this direct, personal experience of what it's like to choose is maybe the most compelling evidence there is. So, we seem to be stuck between two extremes, right? A totally determined universe with no freedom at all, or a universe where we have this radical freedom to start new causal chains. But what if it's not an either-or question? A lot of thinkers have argued for a more nuanced middle path. This is an idea called compatibilism, and it's a real game changer because it redefines the whole problem. Compatibilists say, look, maybe we've been defining free will all wrong. Freedom isn't about being uncaused, it's about not being coerced or constrained. You're free as long as you're acting based on your own desires, even if those desires were themselves determined. So the key difference here is the source of the action. Let's take the cake example. If you choose to eat a slice of cake because you want it and nothing is stopping you, a compatibilist would say that's a free action. But if someone is literally holding you down and forcing you to eat it against your will, well, that's obviously an unfree action. The freedom comes from acting on your own internal motivations, not from being some kind of uncaused cause. Now, you might be thinking, this is all just a really interesting philosophical puzzle. But what you believe about free will has huge, real-world consequences. It affects everything from how our justice system works to how we think about our own successes and failures. And this really lays out what's at stake. If you're a hard determinist and believe no one is truly free, then punishing someone out of a desire for revenge doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? The focus should be on rehabilitation. On the other hand, if you're a libertarian, then holding people morally responsible for their actions is completely justified. And compatibilism tries to find that balance, letting us hold people responsible while also understanding the deep causal influences on their behavior. And this really gets to the heart of a dilemma, doesn't it? It's a question that challenges the very foundations of law and ethics. As science shows us more and more about the biological machinery behind our behavior, how do we assign praise and blame in a way that's both fair and effective? We've covered a lot of ground here, from the birth of the universe to the inner workings of the human brain. And as you can probably tell, the question of free will is, well, it's far from being solved. So as we wrap up, it really boils down to three different ways of seeing yourself. The determinist sees you as a single domino, falling exactly as it must in a long cosmic chain. The libertarian sees you as something special, an agent who can actually start a whole new chain of dominoes all on your own. And the compatibilist sees you as free when you act in line with who you are, even if who you are was shaped by that chain. Which leaves us with one final paradoxical thought to chew on. Perhaps the best way to think about all this is to ask yourself, are you just a puppet, your actions completely controlled by forces outside of yourself? Or are you somehow a puppet that has learned to pull its own strings? The answer to that? Well, that might just be what it means to be human.